can be seen, the area of land to the west has never been identified as an area that contributes to the special character and setting of York in any of the evidence-based documents. In the most recent one, if you look at figure 3 of EXCYC 59, that's a figure that's replicated in a number of different things, and Mr. Natkas referred to it just before, whereas the area, which can be contrasted quite neatly with the area to the east, which again explains the fact that the eastern boundary hasn't changed, that's the area to the east is identified as an area retaining the rural setting. So there's quite a neat contrast there between the two areas of land. Again, the area to the west has never, in any of the previous evidence-based documents dating back to 2003, that hasn't been identified as an area contributing as being important to purposes of Greenbelt.
Okay, what I'm going to do now, my apologies, and also a double apology because I also can't read your name.
It's Emma Winter, thank you. Just a very quick point, really, just to say that we support the points that Mr. Waters has already highlighted and the conclusions of Inspector Shepherd. Obviously, these are from 1994, but I think they're important points to take on board. Ultimately, I think the discussion that we've been having around the table has cemented that our concerns really do relate to the Greenbelt methodology that we did highlight during phase 2 sessions. Obviously, the work's been continually amended and updated throughout the process to address the concerns that have been raised. And I think there's just so many different pieces of evidence now. And it was becoming clear that part of that is slightly conflicting. And therefore, in terms of the selection and the justification for some sites, there is concerns, and I think that is evident around the table today from the different points that are coming out. So really, it was just not to read out everything that we've said in our representations, but just to say that we have documented this at various stages during the preparation of the plan, and they're still valid points. Thank you.
Yeah, what I want to do is take, if there are any other sort of wider points rather than anything that's on detail, particularly in terms of the main modifications, I will take those now. I did want to take a quick step back to the main modifications. I'm also very conscious of our poor performance in relation to time. I will shortly need to take a short break, but during which I wonder if we might explore what time we are physically ejected from the building.
Certainly, sir. We'll double check for you.
So, yeah, just in reply, first of all, to the points we've heard. And then, as I say, I'm going to move then to some more detailed points in relation to the main modifications. And then, yeah.
I've got some more references for you. There isn't a lack of consistency, it's just there is disagreement. The fact is that the change that was made to ST7 was explained in 2016. And if you want detailed consideration, look at SD102, which is the annex to the Heritage Impact Assessment at pages 2 to 4, which explains A, the importance of the countryside to the west, B, its contribution to setting, C, the issue of compactness is a specific issue which is considered, and D, the issue of the importance of the views from the ring road. That is echoed in the heritage paper itself at pages 26 to 30. And compactness, you will see, is part of that general consideration.
My apologies, Mr. Alvin. Did you say the importance of the land to the west or east of the site, to the west?
But yes.
And,
because it's being contended that the Greenbelt boundary shouldn't go further west. Well, the short answer is that has all been thoroughly considered, and you'll find the details in the Heritage Impact Assessment in the appendices, which deal with ST7 at pages 2 to 4, which may have been, And you'll also find consideration of the general issues, such as compactness and setting, in the 2014 Heritage Topic Paper, which is which is SD 103, and you'll find that in section 6. So as you know, in terms of York's historic character, there's a general concern about not allowing the compact city to sprawl too far. That relates obviously clearly to purpose 4. There is concern, and you'll see this also in the historic England representations I referenced earlier, SID 118, that those issues come forward in their representations at the Reg 19 stage. They use slightly different language, but you can see that the issues of the relevance of the countryside to setting and the historic character, the views from the Ring Road, and the importance of the surrounding countryside are all echoed very clearly in the representations from Historic England. And it's simply not correct to say that Historic England, no more than the council, focused simply on the setting of the Minster. It is one of the key issues, but not the only one. And so I just, without going into it in any more detail, those references will assist you, I hope, with those points. Thank you. And I think, Jane, you wanted to add a couple of short points.
Thank you. So you asked about the size of the gap. Colleagues informed me, having measured that for us just now, the closest point of the gap is 160 metres, but the vast majority of it is significantly larger than that. A couple of other quick points, if I may. Mr. Matkus talked about the assessment criteria. Just for clarification, as Mr. Elvin has said, compactness absolutely is part of that. And to be clear, it's criterion 1 in the methodology. And then my final point, Mr. Matkus questioned whether the green wedge that this allocation creates actually meets the purposes of Greenbelt. I would say if we agree that the setback that's required for the compactness in the assessment, if we agree with that, then it must be that that green wedge serves Greenbelt purpose. Thank you.
And I think Mr. Ridge wants to say something about the reference to transport Mr. Merritt raised.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add a little bit of clarification to the traffic congestion figures that Mr. Merritt used, because I think they came from the 2019 transport paper, which we updated at the beginning of this inquiry with a new series of traffic forecasts. So the current forecast that we have for Hull Road suggests that there will be a maximum increase of about 20% in PM peak journey times. The other journey time increases are smaller than that. And that equates to an extra 3.3 minutes of journey time, so 3 minutes 18 seconds. But the point that is really important to make is that is a change from the 2019 figure, or between 2019 and 2033, which is a period over which we would expect traffic to grow in any case, and we would expect journey times on the network to increase. So we ran an alternative scenario where we placed the same quantity of development in other locations. And actually that did return a slightly lower journey time, but the difference was very small. It was only a 6% difference. So the conclusion that we reached from that analysis is that the placement of the development in that location doesn't make a particularly significant difference to traffic flow and journey times on on the whole road. I think the other point that I would make in relation to sustainable transport. Certainly I would agree with the principles that Mr. Merritt outlined about encouraging people to use sustainable transport from this site as much as possible. It has a 15% target mode share for bus. Within the viability statement, we considered a £500,000 contribution from developers, which we believe is sufficient to extend the existing Derwent Thorpe service to provide a high-frequency service to site ST7.
Okay. A number of nameplates have gone up. I am kind of moving on, but that only encourages more, apparently. Okay. Look, I'll take Mr. Pittam first of all, then Mr. Waddington.
Great, thank you. And our interest, obviously, is quite specific, from speaking on behalf of the York Travellers Trust. And I would just be really interested to see, given that we've looked at the illustrative master plans, that there doesn't appear to be any provision within this site for a traveller site. And I would like to know if we could be educated on how the plan would meet the 3 or 4 pictures that the council's own policy will require to be met. And yeah, I could follow up from that, but that's the first question. Thank you.
Yeah, are you joining me on Thursday? I think it is, Mr. Pittam.
I certainly will, but we think that it'd be quite interesting to see from the developer's point of view what their thoughts are on this.
I understand why you put the marker down, because there are a lot of them here today. Mr. Waddington.
Ask Mr. Henderson to deal with this, because he'll be dealing with.
So you foreshadowed our view on this, which this all needs to be dealt with together at the session that you've dedicated for these matters. Because before we go into this, the question is, are these showstoppers to the delivery of these sites as allocations? The answer is no, they're not. It's not even suggested that they are. So this is purely a gypsy and traveller issue to be dealt with in that session. Not for today, when we're trying to deal with the principle of allocating these sites, and are they constrained in terms of their deliverability?
As I understand it, some of the site promoters are attending that session as well, aren't they?
Indeed, sir, and they have views, a various range of views, all of which we will take into account and discuss at that point in time. But for today's purposes, the prism through which we're looking at this is, are they showstoppers? And nobody, not even the Travellers Trust, certainly not in the representations we've seen, suggests that they are showstoppers.
I'll take the point. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I would say, Mr. Pittam, I've got a whole day on gypsies and traveller, gypsy and traveller related issues on Thursday. So that is the point where really I want to spend time focusing down on that issue amongst numerous others.
There's only one developer that has registered to appear on Thursday. None of the ones that I think are here today have registered to come to that session.
I can only say that that's a matter for them. Mr. Waddington.
I think we've all read the work of Historic England in different ways, and I thought that they were much more concerned, as well as concerned about the Minster, as about the surrounding countryside, and I've heard nothing about that today, is the effect of ST7 on the countryside. And I'm talking about, specifically about Merton, which is just across the, from ST7, is just across the A64. And in fact, the fact that ST7, as it was drawn then, was close to Merton, and they asked for the boundary to be pushed back. But the council really had little to say about that and didn't move an inch. And I think we ought to look back at the reasons that the report asked for the movement.
Could I just ask Mr. Waddington that you pull your microphone closer like that?
Okay. I always think my voice carries better than it does. The second point is about the effect of ST7 and traffic. There's much to be said in the reports about the traffic within ST7, but not about what the effect is on the surrounding countryside. Merton has 3 lanes, country lanes. That's all it has in the parish. One of those is Merton Way. The number of cars you can just calculate from, even if there was a boundary and we were only taking half the number of cars, the effect in Merton Way will be considerable. And yet there's no, as far as I can see, no consideration yet being made, much about traffic into ST7, within ST7, but absolutely nothing, as I can see, out of ST7, what effect that will have on the country lanes, not only of Merton, but of other surrounding villages.
Thank you, Mr. Waddington. Councillor Waters.
Just following on a bit with transport, of course, the more overloaded the A1079 gets, the more the surrogate main road that leads from Merton through Osbaldwick, Millfield Lane and Melrose Gate becomes more and more used. And if you bear in mind, we've got ST4, ST7, potentially considerable amount of traffic from ST15, plus a great deal of commuter traffic from new housing in Pockletton and Stamford Bridge, all coming in on the A1079. Morning and evening peaks are absolutely ridiculous. I'm certainly not going to challenge any figures the council produce, and I'll just refer you back to the correspondence I've submitted into the inquiry from Inspector Borsos from a public hearing in 2016, when he actually states in writing that he didn't believe the figures the council were giving him, so he carried out 2 site visits and that convinced him. I was so impressed with that inspector, with what he did there. One point as regards this fanciful idea of a bus connecting from Derwentthorpe through to ST7. Derwentthorpe got planning permission in 2006 on the basis that it was 4 quarters, there would be no through traffic. And on that basis, I just cannot see how you would connect a bus through from Derwentthorpe to ST7. The current bus service that runs there goes on to the 3rd phase of Derwentthorpe in a loop and back out on 5th Avenue.
Okay, all 3 of you are still indicating on this side. I don't know if that's just because you've forgotten to put your name plates back down. It is. That's happy news. So, are there any final points from this side of the table, as it were? Mr. Merritt.
Yes.
And the final bite of this particular cherry,
it
Mr.
will be
Merritt.
it will be a short one. It was just in terms of Mr. Ridge's response. Yes, I was quoting from table 7.1. In the council's traffic analysis, but I used the end year of 2040, not 2033. Obviously, the plan ends somewhere between the 2, but by 2040, as I said, it's virtually a 50% increase. in the journey time along the A1079. And for a plan that has a basic policy not to increase congestion in the city, which those journey times increases certainly represents a major increase in, as I say, highlights the issue of we've got to find much more sustainable ways of serving the journey needs of people in the new developments as well as the existing. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a very short break now. On our return, I will come back to the council to see if it has any comments on what we've just heard. And then I know that some want to look at some of the detail of the proposed main modifications. So that's my intention. I'm not quite sure, frankly, what my intention is in relation to the other two sites. And I'd ask the council maybe to give some thought to that over the short adjournment, unless you've already had some thoughts.
Not specifically. Other to just to let you know, 5:30 is when we get kicked out, I'm afraid.
Well, by happy coincidence, that's the latest that I'm prepared to stay today anyway. It's frankly not fair to participants for me to stay here till, because it's quite tiring, frankly, and it becomes more and more difficult to take what I'm hearing properly on board in the way that I need to. So I'll take a 15-minute break now and then progress as I've just indicated when we return. So I make it 16:08. I'll adjourn the hearing to resume at 4:25. Thank you.